apply with LinkedIn, or log in with Google. I'm sure you have seen these buttons hundreds of times, but what do they really do? How did they become so common on the web? And what distinguishes the second, designed for authentication, from the first, designed to authorize the host application, the Botify website here, to use the user's LinkedIn profile data? OAuth 2.0, OpenID Connect, authorization, authentication. What do these terms actually mean? By the end of this video, you will not only understand their origin, purpose, and functioning, but also be equipped to implement them in any system using any tech stack. Then, to make it practical, we will integrate one of these buttons into an advanced LinkedIn clone project that already has an email and password authentication system built. Many years ago, humans invented computers, and in 1989, Tim Berners-Lee introduced the World Wide Web. It was about static pages with no user identification or personalization, so websites were the same for everyone. There wasn't a way to update a website based on the user's data or the user's activity. In 1994, an engineer that goes by the name of Lou Montulli introduced the notion of cookies while working at Netscape. Cookies are small key-value pairs that enabled websites to recognize users and offer personalized pages. These cookies were generated after an authentication, often with an email and a password. Authentication is the process of knowing a user's identity on a website. An email and password authentication was one of the most common ways to do this authentication, also known as form login or simple login. How it works is as described in this diagram. The user comes on a website, the website asks for its username and its password, then the website is going to go and check its database, hash the password, verify the hash, grab the user info, and then come back to the browser and set a session ID, so a cookie. And then for upcoming visits of the same user, the browser is going to grab the session ID, pass it to the backend, and the backend would parse the session ID to recognize the user to help them go ahead with what they were doing before quitting the website, for example, being able to show them their basket on an e-commerce website, for example, or being able to show them their friends on a social media application. As you can see, we have talked about authorization for the first time. Authorization is different from authentication. Authentication is the process of identifying a user on a website, while authorization is what a user that is identified can do on a website. For example, in an e-learning website, we could have students and we could have teachers, and students and the user would have different authorization on the e-commerce application. Like teachers can create courses, but a student can only subscribe to a course. That has been said, the email and password authentication has some issues. The first one is a maintenance problem, because the authentication and the authorization here is always tied to an application. So if you are a company and you have multiple applications like Google having YouTube, Google Search, Gmail, and others, so you would have an email and password form on each one of these applications and have a backend logic for doing everything that we talked about. And it creates also a security burden across each application, because there are a lot of compliance around the world, like GDPR in the European countries and others around the world. So if there is a security compliance change in some country, you would go and you would have to update the code of all your applications, which is quite difficult. So around 2002, the SAML protocol was introduced, leading to single sign-on across sites, SSO that you might have already seen on different websites. So the SSO protocol solved the problem of having to duplicate authentication logic across different applications maintained by one company. But there are things that the SAML didn't know how to do. One of these things is delegated authorization, and this delegated authorization problem led to the genesis of OAuth. And what is delegated authorization? Delegated authorization is a way for an application to act on behalf of a user on a different system. So if I had to summarize this in a phrase, delegated authorization is all about how can I let a website access my data without giving it my password. And OAuth was created as a standard to solve this specific problem. And OAuth 2.0 is the version recommended and mostly in use today. So before OAuth, for example, what you are seeing down below here is a screenshot that's very famous, where the Yelp company would ask you at the end of your registration to give them your email and your password so that they can connect to your Gmail account, so you can find out your email contacts that are already on the Yelp application. So in here below, they say the password you use to log in into your Gmail email. So today, Yelp is a very big company and we can somewhat trust them, but they weren't. They were a very small startup, and giving your email and password like this to a small company is very dangerous, because for many of us, our Gmail account is the key to all the applications that we use on the internet, from our bank account to our health insurance and everything in between. So this is a very dangerous thing to do. And sadly, there are still websites that do that, especially banks. Like these bank aggregator applications, they still ask you your credentials if you want to aggregate your data across banks, which is very, very, very bad. Now, how the OAuth protocol or the OAuth standard solve this delegated authorization problem? So the Yelp application, instead of asking you your credentials, he would show you this connect with Google button. You hit on this button, you are redirected to the Google login page, which is accounts.google.com. You sign in, then Google would show you this grant screen where they tell you specifically what the Yelp application is trying to access in your account. So like here it's saying allow Yelp to access your public profile and contacts. So if you say yes, if you say no, the process is stop here. The OAuth flow that started when we clicked on this button would stop. And if you say yes, you're gonna get redirected back to the Yelp application on a callback URL. And then the Google server would send a token to the Yelp application that the Yelp application can use to query your contact. So as you can see, this is very secure because the Yelp application can only access your content and he cannot do anything else. And whenever you don't want to, you can revoke this access by going to the accounts.google.com anytime. And we're gonna understand how this is working when I show you the code that I talked about in the beginning of the videos. So for now, there are a few things that you should know. What you are seeing here is called a OAuth flow that starts when the user clicks on the button and that ends when the Yelp application gets back the token that allows them to query the user's contact. And there are different OAuth flows. The two most common ones are the server flow and the implicit flow. And you will understand the difference between the two when I show you the example. And there are terminology that you should know. The first one being what we call in the OAuth world, the resource owner. So the resource owner here is the user that is clicking on this button. So it's me, like if I am on the Yelp application. Then we have the client. The client here is the application that is trying to get data from the OAuth server. So in this case, the client is the Yelp application. And we then have the authorization server. So the authorization server is accounts.google. Then we have the resource server, the server that owns the data that the Yelp application is trying to get. And in this case is contacts.google.com. Then we have what we call the authorization grant. The authorization grant is simply another way of naming the flows that we talked about earlier, the server flow and the implicit flow in the other ones. So the server flow is called authorization code grant and the implicit flow is called the implicit grant. We're going to be understanding this in a bit when I show you the actual process of how everything works when I show you the code. And then we have the redirect URI. So the redirect URI is here the yelp.com/callback. So when we click on this button, the Yelp application will tell the accounts.google server where to redirect back after the user accepting here on the grant screen here. And then I'm going to be showing you how all of this works when I show you the code, as I said. And then we have the access token, which is just the token that the Yelp.com application would send with its request when they are accessing the contact here. So oftentimes it's a bearer token, so it would be in the authorization header of the HTTP call. And this OAuth 2.0 protocol was a success. It was a success so much that people started to using it also for authentication. So as you can see in what you are seeing here, there is no way for the Yelp application to know who the user is. Actually, it's not for authenticating a user. It's all about getting an access token to be able to access its data. So the Yelp application wouldn't know who the user is, and people so created different type of hacks on top of the OAuth to do authentication as well, and that's where the OpenID Connect protocol was introduced. So the OpenID Connect is not a protocol on its own. Actually, it's just a small add-on on the OAuth 2.0 standard, and it's specify how to do authentication on top of OAuth 2.0. So with OpenID Connect, we now have the ability to do delegated authorization, but also to authenticate users. And it adds an ID token. So with OAuth 2.0, we only had an access token. Now we also can get an ID token with OpenID Connect, and this ID token, it's a GWT. I'm going to be showing you all of this in a bit, that contains information about the user, like its email and all. And it's not a separate protocol, so as you can see, they work together. And very often people would use OpenID to connect, but also they would use an access token to get informations, like when a user sign up on a website using the continue with Google button, the application would use the OpenID token, which is a GWT, to grab the user's email, but also use the OAuth to get an access token to get the user's info, so that they populate its name, its first name, its profile picture and all, so that they don't have to type it from scratch. And you're gonna understand how all of this work together when I show you the code in a bit. And speaking of the code, let's dive in. Earlier I was saying that there are multiple OAuth flows, but all of them require the first step to be the same: to go on the OAuth provider and register your application. In our case, we're going to be testing it with Google OAuth. So for that, we're going to go to Google Cloud Console, which is at console.google.cloud here. And we're going to search for Google OAuth platform. We're going to let it. So here, we're going to come here on the clients, and we're going to register one. I've already registered one, but you can do it by clicking on this. Yours may be in English, so it's going to be create a client. So you click here, you're going to give the type of application that you are creating. For us, it's a web application. Then we're going to choose a name. Let's say I'm going to call it just a foo name here. Then we are going to create the redirect URIs. So for us, we are going to be using a debugger that's called OAuth 2.0 debugger, and we're going to use this URI. Okay, so in your case, if you are like developing locally, it would be something like localhost, and you can add multiple of these because you might have URLs that are different on your system, on the staging, on production. So the OAuth providers allow you to add multiple of them, which is quite handy. So and then for now I'm gonna keep this just like this one, and then we are gonna hit create. So as of now, our application is in test mode. So when an application is in test mode, not everyone can give access to it. But we're gonna go here on the audience tab here, and we are going to add some test users. Okay, and for me, I have already added my Gmail. You can add yours or like your colleagues, and after testing your application and everything is good, you can publish here. You can hit the publish button here, and the Google team is going to validate, so that you are not, for example, using the name of an already known application like I did here for LinkedIn, so that Google users are protected to some extent. And then here on the branding here, you can actually customize the grant screen. You can change the name. You can also upload a logo and add a bunch of information, so that your grant screen is as customized as you wish. So coming back to the clients, I have created this one just to show you the process, but I will not be using it. I will instead be using this one. So I'm going to delete this. So as you can see, the brand is actually tied to your Gmail account, and within a brand you can have multiple applications. So this is the application that I have created before. So here I've got like a URL one for my localhost, another URL for my localhost for the sign up page. I've also got the OAuth debugger that I showed you, and then I also have an OpenID Connect debugger, and I'm going to show you this one in a bit. So to test all of this, the first thing that we need is to grab the ID of our client, this ID. So I'm going to come to the OAuth debugger. It's on oauth-debugger.com, or you can just type on Google OAuth debugger and you get this website, so that you are able to test like the that your client is working before going into your code. And that's what we will be doing here as well. So for us, we are trying to connect to the to Google, and the Google OAuth server URL is this one. Then we're going to use the redirect URI, like the page that Google will send to us after the grant screen is accepted. So for us, since we are testing it on this website, we're going to use the same URL. Then we need the client ID. So this is the same client ID that I just copied from here. I'm going to come back. And then we need any scope. So this is something that I didn't talk about. So what is any scope? So any scope is, so as we were saying, OAuth is all about delegated authorization. And there is a notion of a scope. Like this one, for example, is any scope where I'm saying I want to access to the YouTube analytics of the user that will connect and read only. There are some scopes that are simpler, like email, the email scope, which is just email. So I'm saying I want to access the email of the user. And on different OAuth provider, the scope, the naming of the scope can differ, okay? And then we have something called state. So any state is actually used to store information about the context of the user. Let's say I am trying to visit the my profile page on LinkedIn, and when I hit enter on the URL, and let's say my authentication has expired, so the LinkedIn would send me to their login page, and I can use the continue with Google button to go in login, okay? And how they are able to know to which page they should redirect me after all of this is completed. For that, they would use a state. So in a state, you can store context about what the user is doing. And also, the very important piece of information that we store in the state is an anti-forgery token. So an anti-forgery token is actually a token that is generated when we click on the continue with Google button by the client, and that we get back from the Google server after the authentication is completed. And why we do that? We do that to make sure that the response that we are getting back is from the server that we redirected. It's to avoid like cross-site attacks in nonce, which is used to prevent reply attacks. I'm gonna link this, or you can just search it and you can click here to read about it, okay? We're gonna be covering this in a bit. For now, let us keep going. And then we specify the response type. So the response type could be like here, when we say code here, this is the server flow, which is also known as the authorization code flow, code grant. So as you can see, it's named like this sometimes it's called the server flow. And if we click on, let's say on token, we are using the implicit flow. So the implicit flow is a flow that's used when there is no backend involved. We have something like a single page application that is running that just want to use the information about the user. And I'm gonna be showing you this in a bit, and why you should most often, if you can, use the authorization code flow. The authorization code flow grant, how it works. Let me show you first. So here I'm using the authorization code flow, which is known as the server flow, and the request that we are sending is actually a HTTP request. So it's a GET request to this URL where we specify the client ID, the redirect URI, the scope that we want, the response type, like what we have chosen here, the response mode, which is actually not really required. Then we have the state in the nuance. I'm gonna click send. So when I click here, I'm gonna get sent to the Google OAuth. So as you can see, I'm on accounts.google.com, and I'm gonna choose this account. And it actually didn't show me the ground screen because I already have given access to it. So I have went on my Google accounts in the security tab, and I have revoked the authorization that I have already given to this app. So now if I click, it should show me the ground screen. So I'm gonna hit enter. So first it's gonna say that you are accessing an application that is in test mode, okay, which is not validated by Google, and that I should stop if I don't trust the developer which is being here, okay. So I'm gonna say continue. Then this is the ground screen that I was talking about. So the OAuth provider is gonna tell the user what I am trying to access, and this is like based on the scope that we have here. The more scope we have here, actually we can have multiple of them separated by a space. The more we have like scopes, the complex the screen gets, and likely that the user will not accept, because if we ask many information about, they can get scary, okay. So ask for what you need only. So now I'm gonna say continue, okay. So after doing that, I'm getting back what is called an authorization code, and this code actually as of now is useless. I cannot do anything with it. I need to exchange this code with an access token that will allow me to grab the YouTube analytics, which is why I have added this scope here. So I'm gonna come back here, I'm gonna copy this, and I am here, I've created some endpoints. These endpoints actually are created in the playlist. As I said earlier, I'm gonna show you a concrete example in a LinkedIn clone project that we have been building throughout a series for a month now, so that you get a clear idea of how all of this works later. So we're gonna come here, and actually here the OAuth debugger is also telling us that we should go and exchange this code with an access token. So before doing that, let me go to the YouTube analytics. For now I'm gonna remove all of this. Let's say I'm gonna remove all of this, and I'm going to try to grab the information about my channel. So we're gonna get like a 401, which is access denied, because the YouTube won't let anyone to access information about our channel. So we either should log in to YouTube like ourselves to have access to all of this, or we need a token to be able to access all of this. So here I'm gonna come here, and I'm going to exchange the code that I have received. Sorry, this code, I'm gonna exchange it with an access token, and this, the exchanging part, should be a post. So remember, for getting the code it was a get, but now we should send a post, and it should be a post of a form URL encoded, okay. Like in the body we need these key value pairs. The first one is a grant type, so the OAuth flow that we are using. So for us, since we have clicked here on the code, we are using the authorization code flow, and the authorization code flow is called authorization code, and it should be sent as this grant type key. Then we need the code that we have received. So let me make sure I'm on the right page. So the code that we have received, then we need the client ID like before, then we need something that we didn't use so far, which is called a client secret, and this client secret is what is it? Yeah, it's this one. So we need this client secret to be able to exchange the code that we have received with the access token, and I'm going to show you why we are doing all of this, why there is a big reason related to security and also networking behind why it's designed like this. So the client secret, and then the redirect URI. Now if I hit send, as you can see, I'm getting back an access token, and the response is also specifying the scope that I have requested, the token type, it's a bearer, sorry. So I'm gonna grab this and I'm going to come back to the OAuth YouTube Analytics, and now I'm gonna say that I will be sending, sorry, a bearer token, paste it, send. As you can see, I'm getting back information about my channel. So this is the flow for the authorization code grant, and I'm going to show you a diagram here and explain why we are doing all of this, why we're not just simply getting back the access token right away, why we're getting back a code that we need to exchange with an access token. So as I said, it's really related to cybersecurity and also to networking. So if you remember, so the first request that we are making here, this request, we are making it in the browser. So everything that's in the browser, what is in our HTML or in JavaScript, everyone can see it. But also, any JavaScript library that we have on our website could also use it. So there is something that's called a front channel and back channel in cybersecurity and in networking. So the browser is known as a front channel, and our backend server is known as a back channel. So a back channel is a channel that we can fully trust, and the front channel is a channel that we somehow trust, but not entirely, which is normal. We somehow trust the browser because there are vulnerabilities, like someone seeing our code, inspecting our code, in grabbing information, or in a script that we have on our page doing malicious things. So this is why the authorization code flow is designed like this. Our application, when we click on the continue with Google, or when we click on send request here, our application is sending the request authorization code here to the YouTube server, YouTube OAuth server. The YouTube OAuth server will show the grant screen to the resource owner, like the user. The resource owner accepts the grant screen. We get back an authorization code. Then we exchange this authorization code. We send the post request that we sent earlier to exchange the authorization code with a access token. Then we would send our API request with the access token and get back the API response. So why we are doing all of this? We are doing all of this because we don't want to, you can actually ask, let's say, instead of choosing code, if I choose token, we would be using the implicit flow, okay? So as you can see, response type has changed from code to token. If I click on request, this time it's going to be the same, but I'm simply going to get back directly the access token that I can use here as a bearer and get informations. The problem with that is that everything is happening in the client, okay? So someone could steal, like someone that's watching over, let's say, my head while I'm working, could steal this token. Also, a script that's a JavaScript script that's running on our website. As you know, front-end applications tend to have a lot of npm packages. Someone could steal it. If you don't have any server whatsoever and you cannot do otherwise, you are allowed to do this, but you just should know the security traits that are you are making. So coming back to the authorization code flow, which is more secure, and I'm gonna explain that one more time. So here what's happening is that we send the request on the client, we show the grant screen to the user accepted, and we get back the authorization code is still on the client. And here, this authorization code that's on the client, someone can steal it, whether it's a script or someone watching over my head. They cannot do anything with it. They need to exchange it with an access token. And to be able to access it, to exchange this code with an access token, we need an additional information. If you remember, which is the client secret. So the client secret, as you can see, is not in the, I'm gonna come back here, just some nuance. So here, when we are making the request on the client, we're not specifying the client secret. So the client secret is only stored on our backend where nobody can see it. So this is why the authorization code flow is more secure. So with that, we have covered a lot about OAuth. Before going into the code and showing you concretely how it is done, we're gonna talk about OpenID Connect now. So as you can see, the OAuth is all about delegated authorization, authorizing my application to be able to read my YouTube analytics. That's it. It's not designed for the application to authenticate me, okay? The application don't need to know who really I am. All it cares about is to have information about my YouTube analytics. Actually, the delegated authorization is done for users that are already logged in. Like I showed you in the beginning of the video, the Yelp application would show this screen after you have already signed up on their website. And for the job application of the Botify, they don't need also to know who really you are. They just need an authorization so that they go on the LinkedIn API and grab your user information from there. So it's all about reading information about someone in a different system. And as I said, the OAuth worked so well that people started using it for authentication, and that led to all different types of hack that are built on top of the OAuth. Like YouTube, like let's say Google would add its own hack, and Facebook would add its own hack. And so some smart people went back and they added the OpenID Connect, which is a small add-on on the OAuth standard. And the only difference actually between these two is that with the OpenID Connect, you are gonna specify a known scope, which is called OpenID. Okay, actually I'm going to use another debugger, which is called OpenID debugger. It's actually built by the same person, so it's already populating my information because I have already used this. So there is this scope that we should specify. Let me for now I'm going to say it's going to be just OpenID. So by doing that, the flows are still the same. So we have code flow, the authorization code flow, and also we have the token. So we will still be getting a token if we want. Let's say I'm going to say I am trying to authenticate the user with the OpenID scope, but also I want to use the OAuth protocol so that I'm able to access his authentication, his YouTube analytics. So we can do both here. So then I'm going to say I'm going to be using the authorization code grant flow. So it's going to be the same. I'm just going to say a click here. The grant screen is going to be slightly different. So for now it's saying that the application, the OpenID Connect debugger.com here, is going to access to your name, to your email address, and also to your profile picture. So if I say continue, I'm gonna get back a code like before that I can exchange here. I'm gonna paste it here using my client secret, exchange it. There is a redirect mismatch. Here we have used OpenID debugger, so it's not OAuth debugger anymore. And after hitting send, so as you can see, we are getting an access token like before with the specified scope, but we are also getting an ID token. So this ID token is actually a GWT. So I'm gonna go to GWT and I'm gonna decode it. So as you can see, it contains a lot of information. So it contains information about the user in the payload here, and also it contains the nonce that we have sent to prevent reply attacks. So coming back here, so here I'm also going to say that I want the email in the OpenID token. Send again. So depending on the provider that you are using, after specifying just the OpenID scope here, what you get here might differ, okay? For Google to be able to have the email as part of the payload here, you should also add the email like scope here. So coming back, I hope this is the right code. Send. I am going to grab the token, come back here, paste. So as you can see now, it contains my email as well. So for authentication, the application would simply parse this GWT to grab the email, and then it would go and check in the database if this user exists. So it would sign in. If it doesn't, it will create it. And I will be showing you how all of this work in a bit with the code. And also with the OpenID Connect, we can use the set of the authorization code flow. We could simply say that I want to access, get back the access token and the ID token right away using the implicit flow. So that would work as well. So we're gonna directly get back an access token and the ID token. Now let me show you how all of this work with the code. So I'm gonna close all of this and open the LinkedIn clone project that we have been building as I said. So here, this is my button for doing OpenID Connect. When I click on this button, I am going to this URL. So it's the same URL as before. I'm passing it the client ID as a variable, the redirect URI here also as a variable. Then I've got the scopes, the OpenID scope, the email scope. I'm also sending the profile scope. When adding the profile scope, I will be able to have within the OpenID token, the GWT, also like the first name, the last name, and some other information about the user. Then the response type. So I am saying that I am using the authorization code flow, and then I am sending the state. So in the state, as I said, I am sending some context about the user. Let's say here, I'm gonna try to go to LinkedIn to profile number 2. Since I'm not logged in, I'm gonna get redirected here. But when I log in, I want to be able to go to the page that I initially wanted to go, okay? And this information, we store it also in the state. So this is why in the state I am storing an object that I am stringifying. So I have the anti-forgery token. This is used for cross-site attacks prevention. And this, for now, I'm writing it like hard coding it, but you should generating one using a random string generator, okay? So that it is specific to each authentication that is happening on your website. So I am gonna redirect to this, and when I click, so I'm going to click. So as you can see, I am on the YouTube account. So if I say it's going to show me like before, and when I click it, let me actually modify one thing so that you are able to close this. For now, I am not gonna call this button so that you see what this function, so that you see what we get back. So I'm gonna hit continue, and look what we are getting back. I'm gonna decode this URL decoder, paste. It's sending to us the anti-forgery token that we have pasted, the destination. So it's saying that before trying to log in, the user wanted to go to profile 2. Then we're getting back the code like before I showed you in the OAuth and OpenID debuggers. So this is the scope, the code. Then we have the scope that we have specified. And actually for the scope, for the profile, we used to type profile, but the server has completed with the full scope name. Okay. So then I'm going to use, so I need to exchange this code with an ID token and an access token. But before that, I should verify that this URL, this redirection, is coming from a server that I asked before with the anti-forgery token. Okay, so that's what I'm doing here. So here, so I'm grabbing from the search param, the code, the state. If there is an error, we're gonna also get back an error state. Okay, and then I'm grabbing the anti-forgery token, as you can see, and I'm saying the anti-forgery token should be the same as the one that I sent. Now I'm going to be able to send this code to my backend, and the backend is going to use my client secret to exchange it with an OpenID token. So what I'm doing here is that, by the way, you're gonna have a link of the code in the YouTube description if you want to check all of this later on. So I'm going to go to the OAuth login function to show you. All it's doing is that it is sending, let me find it, yeah, it's sending the code, and we're gonna get back an authentication token. And on the backend, let me show you the backend. So on the backend, we are calling, let me find my authentication. So I'm gonna go into here in the controller. So we are calling this endpoint, okay? And when this endpoint receive the code in the page, we're gonna call this function from our service that's called Google login or sign up. So if the user that is clicking on the button is not already part of our application, we are gonna create this token, okay? But the first thing that we do is that we're gonna make a token exchange like we did before. So this is a Java thing that all we're doing is the same as what we did here. Actually, we're simply sending these informations to get back an ID token. So coming back, so that's everything that's happening. Then we are checking that the response is okay, and within the response we're grabbing the ID token, and then we're gonna grab the claims. So the claims that are the data that were in the payload in the GWT website when I pasted the token. So I'm grabbing the claims, and within the claims I'm grabbing the email, okay? And then I'm going to check if there is an email and a user with this email in my database. So if it is the case, I'm simply going to generate the same token as the one that I generate when the user sign in with its email and password and send it. And the client will use this one so to make further requests to my backend. If it's not the case, it means that this user is new. So I'm gonna enter the sign up flow of my application. So for that, I'm gonna grab down in the claims, at least with the Google OAuth, you're gonna get the information about whether the user has verified its email or not. So I'm gonna grab this one. I'm gonna grab its given name, its family name, and I am going to save it here. And this function that is extracting claims from the ID token should also validate the ID token. Actually, it should validate that this ID token is coming from Google and not any other malicious server, okay? And that I am doing it with this Jabber. You can find the code if you want to do it with Java in the GitHub. In all the other languages, they would provide either packages like libraries for validating tokens. So what I'm doing is that actually I am grabbing this certification from the Google OAuth server, and I am using this certification to validate my token here. And after the validation is done, I'm parsing the claims. Actually, how to know this URL, like for getting the certification. So actually the OpenID Connect standard is going to force all certified servers to provide something that's called a discovery. I think I'm not writing it the right way here. So a discovery document. So it's actually a URL. The server should provide a URL. When you visit this URL, you're gonna get back all the information about this OAuth server, okay? So what we built here is an OAuth client that's consuming an OAuth server. And for an OAuth server to be certified, it should provide a certain things, and this discovery URL is part of them. So as you can see in the discovery URL, we have the token endpoint and others endpoints, but also, as you can see, the URL for validating the GWT, which is the ID token. So if we were to do things the right way, actually we shouldn't write these URLs. We shouldn't hard coding them in the code like this. Also, for exchanging the token, we should make a request to the discovery endpoint, and we then should cache this information and set the URLs dynamically. So by doing that, we are able to use actually these same functions for different OAuth providers. We could have continue with Google, but also continue with GitHub, and the code would be the same. We just have to dynamically grab what endpoint to call using the discovery document or the discovery URL. So I'm gonna come back to here, and I'm gonna increment my function call, so that you are able to see how all of this works in action. So now if I click here, I'm gonna come here, I'm gonna accept, I'm gonna come back, my backend is gonna make a request, and since this user is a new user, where we enter the creation flow of the website. So as you can see, the first name and the last name are already populated, and they are coming from the OpenID Connect token. I'm gonna say next. As I said, all of this we built in previous videos. The link of the playlist is gonna be down below if you are interested in learning about Spring Boot with Java and React.js to build a very complete system like this one. So I'm gonna say I was a HR manager. Then I'm gonna say that I live somewhere in Dakar, let's say, Senegal, and I'm gonna submit. So I'm showing this. Since I don't have any connection, I won't be seeing any feed here. So I'm gonna, let's say, connect to John Doe, and I'm going to actually come here and connect with the John Doe user using its using the password and email authentication that we built in previous videos. So as you can see, I have received this, and I'm going to accept it. And now let's say if I refresh, I see the post of John Doe, which is my connection. So if I like, John Doe is gonna receive a notification that says Yusuf has liked your post, as you can see here. And we built actually all of this in previous videos if you are interested. So yeah guys, that's it for this video. OAuth and OpenID Connect are complex topics. I tried to make it as simple as possible. Let me know if I succeeded to some extent. Also feel free actually to read here this page that I'm also gonna be linking in the YouTube description below, that actually goes through everything that we covered, and you're gonna get information that are tied to Google itself, but also you are gonna learn more about OpenID and also the OAuth protocol. So thank you so much. If you have learned something from this video, please let me know by sharing it with your friends who are also maybe interested in these topics, by liking it, by subscribing, and see you in the next one very soon. Thank you so much.